as of here today, I think the overcorrection's gone too far. People are just completely throwing out the film that they watch, which I think is very underrated. They're completely throwing out any analytics that go in their model or in their process, and they're just saying the vibe check isn't there. That's just my opinion, but that's what it feels like.
All right, the NFL draft is just over a week away. And as always, we have to bring you an updated rookie rankings just to get you guys familiar again with where we are standing with each and every one of these players. We're going to be going through Zach's 2024 rookie rankings. We have a lot of rookies for you today. Let's not waste any more time. Zach, your 101, or technically your first tier.
My first tier, I labeled it the 101 because I do believe since we have made this video, the 101 has established itself for me. For quite some time in the offseason, I had a very big tier 1, and I don't want to discredit any of those players, but I'm just saying in Superflex formats, there is a clear 101 to me that stands alone. That is Caleb Williams, in my opinion.
Sure.
We have never seen, and I think we would all agree, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know if you disagree in the comment section, but we have never seen a number 1 overall quarterback step into a situation like Caleb Williams is about to step into, right?
Yeah.
You've got DJ Moore, you've got Keenan Allen, you added DeAndre Swift, your offensive line is improving. Oh, and by the way, you have the 9th overall pick. So that's either going to improve the offensive line, you might get Roma Dunze there, you might get Brock Bowers and get crazy. You might get a defensive player, but ultimately your team is going to be better. You're going to be on the field more with more opportunities, right? And put all that aside, he was already my favorite prospect in that Trevor Lawrence type range anyway. So to me, I don't think it matters what your team needs are. I'm going to be drafting Caleb Williams. And I'm finding myself in that very position in one of our Dynasty leagues, Badaki. I don't know if you saw the trade that went down last night, but I traded away CJ Stroud in a package that essentially netted me the 101 and Kyler Murray. I'm now sitting with the Dynasty team that has Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, and Bryce Young. I need Marvin Harrison Jr., but I think the best value is Caleb Williams. So I'm still going to draft Caleb Williams if I end up at the 101 there, and ultimately trade if I wanted to build out a different part of my roster. But I don't know, dude. I can't think of a scenario where he's not the 101 for me.
No, look, I understand. I think there are conversations around Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. based off of Marvin's landing spot. And let's go straight into your tier 1, and then we can kind of build into maybe what I'm going to be talking about here.
And I labeled it tier 1 because these guys should be deserving. They are talents. Every single one of these players is deserving of the 101 in so many rookie drafts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. You know, when you think back to like the last 10 years of Superflex rookie drafts, I know it wasn't that popular 10 years ago, 5 years, right?
Yeah.
All 4 of these names are well worthy of the 101 pick in many of those draft classes. So they're all very, very good, very talented players. At the end of the day, I've just solidified it in my mind because I believe with 100% certainty Caleb is going to the Bears, that he is a 101 for me. So I had to make that distinction today. But
Sure. And one of my biggest arguments here when it comes down to Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. is truly based on Marvin Harrison's landing spot and where he is going to be potentially going, right? And I think this is why I kind of saying I think it's up in the air and up to the individual fantasy player to really make your own decision when it comes down to Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. I think we can all agree Caleb Williams is going to the Chicago Bears. But if Marvin Harrison Jr. goes to the Arizona Cardinals with Kyler Murray, who has proven multiple fantasy relevant wide receivers, or does he go to the Los Angeles Chargers with Justin Herbert, who has produced multiple fantasy relevant wide receivers? I think that's where the conversation comes into play. With Marvin Harrison Jr. could be the 101. Now put Marvin on the Patriots. Who's the quarterback? You put Marvin on the Giants. Who's the quarterback, right? I think that's where the argument starts to come in. At the moment, I think they're both deserving of the 101, depending on your situation and depending on where Marvin Harrison Jr. goes in the NFL draft. Now, once again, we will always say take best player available, but I truly believe you can't go wrong in this. And the 101 to the 105, we keep saying this all offseason. You cannot go wrong with these first 5 players, no matter where they go in the NFL draft. It feels like currently at the moment. Anything can change after, for sure. But I don't know. I get having Caleb. I mean, think about it. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, a better offensive line. I mean, everything is kind of coming to place there for Caleb. But if Marvin Harrison goes with an elite quarterback, I think that is an argument to be the 101 as well.
Yeah, I don't think any of these players are set to fail at all. Like I said, I just think situation matters. And when you combine Caleb's situation and my evaluation of him via film, he stands alone as a clear 101 for me. And last thing I'll say on this is I think oftentimes people throw around this narrative that, well, quarterbacks are like so hit and miss. Do you know how hit and miss a wide receiver is in round one? If you look at the last decade, round one NFL wide receivers, and I understand every class is unique. Marvin and Malik Neighbors, they're worthy of being the number one overall pick in a bunch of draft classes.
Right.
Just flat out in a draft class. That's how good they are as prospects. But still, if you look at the last decade of hit rates for a wide receiver and a quarterback has more than 10% greater hit rate in the first 4 seasons than a wide receiver. Quarterbacks are at 59.4% of hitting. Wide receivers are at 48.6% hitting. So less than 50% of the time you draft a round one wide receiver, they've hit for you in fantasy football. And by the way, I define a hit as having a top 24 points per game season in the first 4 years for a wide receiver, or a top 12 points per game season in the first 4 years for a quarterback. So again, less than 50% of wide receivers in round one hit, almost 60% of quarterbacks in round one hit for those purposes. But this is not me saying Marvin isn't going to hit. It's not me saying Malik isn't going to hit. This is me addressing that narrative to those people who are saying, no, Marvin's safer. Like, there's no, I'm drafting Marvin because I know he's not going to bust. None of us think these guys are going to bust. Why would you draft any of them if you think they're going to bust?
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is if that is someone's narrative as to why they're going Marvin, then it's unfounded in any sort of data.
Sure. I completely agree there. All right, take us to your tier 2.
Tier 2 is a small tier, but I think it's a defined tier. Rome Odunze is in that tier 2.
Mm-hmm.
And look, a lot of people will make a case that Odunze should be right there with Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm just following my film grades.
Sure.
The NFL draft, our rankings after the NFL draft are different to our film grades, to our pre-draft NFL grades. I just don't think Odunze is in that same tier as a Marvin and a Malik as a prospect. I think he's a very good player. I think still, even in last year's class, he's a number one wide receiver off the board easily. But this is just different gravy in 2024 when it comes to these prospects. And J.J. McCarthy is also in this tier. Again, Superflex League. I made this change about 2 months ago because I felt the NFL leaning towards J.J. McCarthy being a top 10 pick in the NFL draft.
Sure.
Now it almost feels locked and loaded that he's a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. At the end of the day, if he does go to the Vikings, if he goes to, your Giants, or if a team like the Broncos trade up, I don't know. But at the end of the day, in a Superflex League, a round one quarterback, I'm definitely going to bet on right around the Odunze range. And that is my tier 2 there.
Yeah, having to think about it right now, there could arguably be, like, J.J. McCarthy may not be the best talent in the NFL draft, but if the mock drafts are true that the Vikings are going to trade up for J.J. McCarthy, he's actually going into a better situation than Caleb Williams, where Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, you think of all these quarterbacks. If you really think about it, one of the top 4 quarterbacks is going to land in a bad landing spot. The other 3 feel pretty secure around the team around them. You think of your Washington Commanders, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin. I know Brian Robinson Jr. is not exciting, but you also have Austin Eckler, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Caleb Williams with the Bears, and like we kind of mentioned already with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, JJ McCarthy, hypothetically to the Vikings with JJ, Jordan Addison, and then Drake May is the lone wolf here. Where does he go? Does he go to the Giants, who has Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt, or does he go to the New England Patriots, who has Mario Douglas and Juju Smith? One of these guys, if you really think about it, are going to land in one of the worst landing spots. Yeah. We just don't know who that is at the moment. But look, when it comes down to Rome Odunze and JJ McCarthy, I completely understand. You really have to understand what's happening in the NFL draft or around NFL teams Because you can have J.J. McCarthy not as, the last quarterback in your rankings, but if the NFL is loving them, you have to go back and reevaluate. And I think that's exactly what we did. I'm not saying we had him last, just saying like, okay, we didn't have too much film on the guy making incredible throws.
I disagree. I actually wholeheartedly disagree. I think JJ is an extremely underrated prospect. He's been my quarterback since December, and I've been on our show constantly saying this dude's underrated. He literally, if you were to build up a prospect, a mold of clay, JJ is that mold of clay. Think about what the NFL wants in a quarterback today. Play extender.
Sure.
JJ is one of the best throwing on the run in this entire class. He's an underrated athlete, impressive accuracy as well on the run. Not only can he throw on the run and sling it, he can do it with accuracy. He's got a very quick release. I think a short to intermediate, his balls are very zippy. He takes really good care of the ball. He's a high IQ guy. Locker room dude, a guy that everyone's going to build around. It's just a lack of experience. I personally think he is a very good prospect who is just getting a lot of disrespect because the team didn't ask much of him. And yes, there's a lot of question marks. But again, you take that mold of clay. I don't know, man. I think he's a better prospect than people give him credit for.
And I'm not discrediting him as a prospect. I'm just saying, one of the things that we kept saying, like when we saw the national championship games, like what? Because we remember going in, we were like, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to see more. For sure.
We need to see more, and we still didn't see that more. And I'm not saying that he doesn't have the tools and the attributes to be that mold of clay, to be the guy. I mean, I'm telling people that if J.J. McCarthy's there at 6, we should take him as a Giants, and sure. Right, like I think that's what we need to do as a franchise. So I agree. I guess what I'm saying is, we coming in, maybe me specifically, I'll talk for myself. I wanted to see more. I wanted to see something else. And I'm kind of leaning more towards the NFL's word of mouth and what they're believing in him rather than what I saw on. Sure. I mean, I saw stuff on film, but once again, didn't see enough. But the NFL is saying, look, I think we've seen a lot. And I'm like, okay, well, I would love to see what you're seeing. Anyways, I completely agree here with J.J. McCarthy being in this tier 2 with Rome Odunze. I would say this top 7 from the 101 to the 107, you are winning at this very moment if you have a top 7 pick in the NFL in your rookie drafts. So take us to your tier 3.
I was going to say as well on the landing spots, I think the Giants are actually the worst landing spot, and I'll explain why. I think they're the worst landing spot because if they go quarterback, they have very little opportunities to improve wide receiver.
I agree.
So if you guys go quarterback in round 1, that means pick 6, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. You don't have your second round pick.
We do. We do have a second round pick.
I thought you sold it for Brian Burns.
We had 2 second round picks. So we sold.
Okay, so you sold one,
and we have a second one. So if we wanted to trade up, hypothetically, or if JJ McCarthy does fall, I'm assuming that second and hypothetically a first and 25 is also going to that team.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I
so
agree.
if you guys do get a quarterback, it's pick 6 or you move up, so you're losing assets. Whereas if the Patriots stick and pick, at least they still have their second round, third round picks. I imagine your second and third rounds might be used in a trade if you moved up. So
yeah,
at the end of the day, I actually think the Giants might be the worst landing spot for fantasy. But
I don't disagree. I don't disagree there either. They need weapons. Whichever quarterback goes there is not going to have weapons, and Wandell and Jalen Hyatt are not the answer, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. All right, tier 3. This is a non-tight end premium format, but Brock Bowers is here, and then Brian Thomas Jr. If it was tight end premium, you can make a good case for Brock Bowers to be right above Odunze or next to Odunze and steadily ahead of J.J. McCarthy. This is not a knock on Brock Bowers at all. It's just we know over the last 5 to 10 years in Dynasty rookie drafts, your tight ends don't really bring you that much value from one year to another. Now, Sam Laporta is a little bit of an outlier. That's never happened in NFL history, a Sam Laporta type of season. So more times than not, your tight ends are not really drastically improving the value from their first year to their second year. They're just typically not producing. Now, Bowers could be an anomaly, just like Laporta was, because we expect him to go in round 1. Maybe he goes later in the draft to an offense that he's just ready to absolutely explode in. Point I'm saying is I have the right to change this after we see what the NFL draft looks like, because this is not an indictment on Brock Bowers, a prospect. I think he's a very good prospect.
Yeah.
Him and Kyle Pitts, I think, are in the same tier as prospects in the last 5 years at that position. But at the same time, I'm just going with what history has done with the tight end position historically and not trying to look only at what happened this year.
Sure. And I guess, my question to you would then be, is there a world where you are taking Brock Bowers maybe ahead of Rome Odunze and JJ McCarthy in a non-tight end premium? Because at the moment, I think with the way history is kind of, like you kind of mentioned, the way history has gone, I'm not necessarily sure, even if Brock Bowers were to go 5 to the Los Angeles Chargers, that I might be taking him over the top 5 guys anymore. I think I've solidified my rankings in the past couple of weeks, saying, okay, Brock Bowers is outside the top 5 based off of the talent and the potential opportunities that the top 5 players are going. I think there could be an opportunity where he can go right ahead of Rome or right ahead of JJ McCarthy, but I think no longer ahead of the top 5 where he was earlier in the offseason.
As a talent, I think he's deserving of tier 1. But how we play fantasy football, it is the position we worry about the least. Be honest with yourself. Even if you love Brock Bowers and you're watching this, be honest. You probably care about tight end the least. Now, you might be in a league where you have a full point premium. That changes a lot. You care about tight end a lot in that league, right? But in a league where you don't have a tight end premium, give me Evan Ingram. Like, I'll start Evan Ingram.
Even with the best landing spot possible, right? Like, even with Brock Bowers going to the Chargers, would you say that the same? Would you?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, like, there is a world. You asked me, is there a world where I take Bowers over Odunze or JJ? There absolutely is a world, and that world looks like Brock Bowers does go to the Chargers, links up with Greg, Roman and Jim Harbaugh, and Rome Odunze is a Chicago Bear, for example. Some people love that landing spot. I'm just not personally in love with that landing spot, just because of the opportunity that he would see from day one. I'm not saying he's less talented than a Keenan, less talented than a DJ Moore, but the reality is you are playing with 2 alphas for their career. 2 guys who have led their team in target share most of their career, right?
Sure.
And now you got to compete with those guys as a rookie, whereas Brock Bowers is the clear number 1 weapon in that offense. Yeah, that would change something. That would totally change something for me. JJ McCarthy, I don't know. He goes... I actually love the Rams as a local spot. I'm just trying to think of like a bad spot.
How about this? JJ McCarthy goes to the Giants. Brock Bowers goes to the Chargers. Are you still...
I'm probably going Brock Bowers.
You're going to go Brock Bowers? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, the tight end spot in a round 1 tight end in the NFL draft is the second least risky bet you can make in a rookie draft anyway. 77.8% hit rate in the last decade for tight ends. Hitting, and that's a top 12 points per game season. 7 out of 9 tight ends have hit for you as first round tight ends within the first 4 years.
Yeah.
So I'm not actually worried about taking Brock Bowers. Like I said, in tight end premium, he's well deserving of being tier 2. If you're looking at the entire NFL draft, he might be a top 5 to 10 player in the entire NFL draft talent wise. He probably is, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a world, but I don't think that world's going to happen, but there is a world. There absolutely is.
There is a world out there. All right, take us to your tier 4 then.
All right, tier 4. Things get a little bit spicy, I'd say.
Come on.
I'll just throw my tier out, and I'm ready for the criticism and any questions. Troy Franklin.
Brother Troy.
Troy Franklin, still today my wide receiver 5.
Oh, man.
Lad McConkey, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, and Jalen McMillan.
Still on it.
The board. Still going to rep my guy. I've said this many times. I think Jalen McMillan will be the best value in the entire NFL draft. Not the best wide receiver value.
Sure.
I think he'll be the best value in the NFL draft, point blank period, for any team that drafts him. So, yeah, that's my tier 4. Obviously a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Let's talk about Troy Franklin over Lad McConkey here, because I made that move after the NFL Combine, and I know, we always say take the NFL Combine with a grain of salt, but Troy Franklin actually didn't help his stock whatsoever, unlike Lad McConkey. I actually do believe Lad McConkey could now be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, early second, where Troy Franklin, I'm getting to the point where I question if he's going to go in the second round. Now, I believe he should. it's like one of my hot takes now. I've been going around. I don't know if Troy Franklin's going to go in the top 2 rounds. Why do you still believe in Troy Franklin and over Ladd McConkey at the moment?
Because I don't put much stock into the NFL Combine. Just being 100% honest with you.
Sure.
So you mentioned that it's a. Let's clarify that. You feel very confident Ladd is going to be drafted ahead of Troy Franklin, right?
I agree. Yes.
I think that is the case. I'm not sitting here saying I believe with 100% certainty that it's happening. Not that you are either, right? So to me, if we are all aboard Team Ladd and you think he's in a clear... And look, I was the conductor of that train. Y'all know that. Ladd, the space creator, that's my guy.
Yeah.
You know, I love him. But if we're all aboard Ladd above Troy Franklin, that means that we have completely thrown out analytics altogether. Production means nothing to you. Okay? It means absolutely nothing to you, because if you look at the production profile of a Ladd McConkey versus Troy Franklin, it's laughable. Like, if you don't watch film, and I understand that's why we watch film, you wouldn't even consider Ladd McConkey in the same breath as Troy Franklin. You just wouldn't. Keep in mind, Troy Franklin is his yards per route run. Everyone loves that metric. Only he, Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison Jr. are in that top 3 of this class. No one else is really all that close to them outside of, like, if I'm not mistaken, Malik Washington.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just my opinion that people have overcorrected too much on Troy Franklin. Yeah, I get it. He's got some areas that he needs to work on, but I think he's an underrated route runner. There's this narrative been thrown out there that he's not a good route runner at all. I just don't agree. I think he's an underrated route runner. His release package specifically is very enticing to me. I love the way he can freeze the defender off the line of scrimmage. Yeah, he's got some drop issues, but the production is insane. Like, the production he's put up in the last 2 years is the exact production you want from a first-round wide receiver. So I'm not willing to just throw out my entire process because of the combine.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people are doing that. And I get it. Look, like I said, if the NFL draft comes here, and you're right, Ladd goes to the Chiefs in round 1 and Troy's round 3 to the Colts, of course, absolutely that will change things in my rankings. But as of here today, I think the overcorrection's gone too far. And people are just completely throwing out the film that they watch, which I think is very underrated for Troy Franklin. They're completely throwing out any analytics that go in their model or in their process. And they're just saying the vibe check isn't there. That's just my opinion, but that's what it feels like.
Look, I get it, because like I think I'm somebody that has done that, and the reason why I say this is because Ladd McConkey puts himself into a better position to land in a favorable landing spot, where Troy Franklin doesn't. And maybe I'm projecting too much when it comes down to the landing spots and those potential. Because yes, if Troy Franklin goes to the Colts, everyone's going to be reevaluating. But if Ladd McConkey goes to the Colts and vice versa, then it switches. Landing spot is a huge part when it comes down to these guys. Now, when I say I've overcorrected, I just moved Ladd ahead of Troy 1 spot. I didn't move him up crazy rankings, so keep that in mind. You can see that in our rookie report as well. So I know a lot of people...
By the way, just so I can jump in there, I'm not sitting here saying Ladd is an inferior prospect. All these guys are in the same tier. I view them in the same light. I think they're all very good prospects. I think they all can produce in the NFL, and they offer something different to every team. It's just, I don't think Troy should be drastically moved down because of the combine.
Yeah. And look, I completely understand. And I know NFL teams probably watch the combine and it's like, oh, at least that's what I'm believing. And then Ladd McConkey outshined his combine and said, okay, who is this guy? We need to know more about him, which puts him in that.
A little tidbit to add into there. Troy Franklin was actually sick during the combine. He talked about this at his pro day. He was sick. He wasn't himself. He had a much better pro day than a combine.
Yeah.
It's very rare you don't have a better pro day than your combine. But
exactly.
It is something to mention. But I still think there is a very special ceiling for him. I think he's got a lower floor than Ladd, but there's a special ceiling for him, in my opinion.
Yeah. Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, and Jalen McMillan are all these guys that, have been in this tier 4 for a while for you. I love Adonai. I love Xavier. Jalen McMillan has been your guy who's been a top 10 wide receiver in your rankings. And you're going to continue to ride the wave there. I still don't see it, but that's okay. That's okay.
I'm telling you, man. I don't know. We're just gonna disagree.
I want to know how many Jalen McMillan believers there are. I'm just at the end of this, in the comments, I'm going to type in Jalen McMillan on my personal account on YouTube, and I want to see how many people believe in Jalen McMillan. I want to see how many likes that comment can actually get there, because I haven't heard anything about him, to be honest, outside of you. Everyone,
I can't tell you how much I love that too. Like every year, it feels like the guy I'm in love with.
Yeah, there's always one
towards the NFL draft. But now I actually have my guy. I have my Puka almost of the year, but to a different extent. I don't think Jalen will go as late in the NFL draft as Puka did. But in the extent of like, I'll draft him in every league I can.
Sure. All right, take it
my
to
favorite player
5.
in the draft. Okay. Well, but just before we get into tier 5, Badaki and I want to quickly let you guys know that the NFL draft is soon, and you want to be prepared for your rookie drafts in your leagues. Okay, I can confidently tell you that our 2024 rookie report that will be updated after the NFL draft. You know how I keep telling you guys how round 1 has this hit rate, wide receivers in round 1 has this hit rate. All that information is going to be available for you in that rookie draft. If you want access to that rookie draft, then report, then use the promo code LAND, become a Mother Flocker member, and go out and crush your rookie drafts. Also, when you're a Mother Flocker member, you get a Dynasty team review by us. You can see we have the My Teams tab over on the Flock Fantasy site. It's in beta mode right now, so it's not fully finished, but you can see where you stand amongst your league. You can sync any teams that you have. Eventually, if you want to look directly in the trade finder for a player, you can do that right in that system. You can submit a team for us to grade. You can change rankings, use my rankings, Badaki's rankings, expert consensus rankings to see how we would rank your team. It is awesome. It's only getting better. And we're excited about the full functionality of that soon.
Absolutely.
Again, use the code LAND, become a Mother Flocker member. But tier 5, this is an exciting tier in my opinion. I still really love this tier. Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. And I've said this in a video that released yesterday, but Penix and Bo are I'm just waiting on the NFL draft. They could go drastically up. They could go drastically down. Because for me, if someone doesn't go round 1, I'm probably not drafting them. That's just because I know the hit rate on round 2 to round 7 is so bad for quarterbacks in fantasy football in the last decade. So if Bo's a round 1 guy, let's talk about it. Maybe we take him over Troy Franklin. I don't know. If Penix goes to the Raiders, how high should we draft him? But at the moment, we need the NFL draft to tell us what's smoke and what's real.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that hit rate, there's only been one quarterback that's hit in the second round in the past 10 years. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's been Jalen Hurts. That was a second round draft pick there. And once again, go check out that video that Zach did release about all the analytics of the hit rates of, I think, every position, not only just quarterbacks, but all those positions there. So, with that video, with that information, it kind of makes you want to not take Bo Nix and Michael Penix if they automatically land in that second round. Now, would that change for you if the landing spot is favorable in the second round, or it has to be in the first round specifically?
So I've thought about it a lot because it's a great question. But if I know in the last 10 years, and I know Russell Wilson was a third round pick at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I know in the last 10 years, only Jalen Hurts has hit, well, why did he hit for fantasy? Clearly, it's his rushing upside. I don't want to be disrespectful, but like if Jalen Hurts had Michael Penix's rushing upside, would he have gotten the contract he got? Would he have made it to the Super Bowl? Would he be a starting quarterback? With no disrespect intended at all, his arm is not up there. So I don't think he would have. Okay. So the way I'm approaching it is I'll take a shot on a second round guy, but he better have some rushing upside. Like Bo Nix and Penix. Nix has probably got more rushing upside than Penix, but I don't consider them that like Konami code, cheat code type of rushing quarterback. So I don't think so. I really don't, but happy to be wrong.
Okay, so most likely not going quarterback in the second round, just all dependent on maybe what happens. Because I think a lot of people have been talking about that, right? What happens if the Patriots take Marvin Harrison Jr. and they take Michael Penix or Bo Nix with that early second round pick that they have? That puts him in a good position to be successful with Marvin. Yeah. At least that's what people are saying, right? A good position to be successful. What if Bo Nix goes to the Giants in the second round, but he gets Malik Neighbors, right? I think a
Sure.
lot of people are going to be leaning these type of ways in early second round capital are quarterbacks because of the favorable landing spots and how important and how things could present. Look, let's be honest. We kind of spoke about it earlier in this video. The quarterbacks that are landing here, there's only going to be one in the top four that doesn't go to a favorable landing spot. But that does not include Bo Nix or Michael Penix.
Sure.
Right? Michael Penix and Bo Nix could go to another landing spot that is favorable. Like you mentioned, the Raiders with Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams. But then there's a different scenario there where there's two other quarterbacks. So there's a couple different ways that you can think about it here if you're going around in that second round quarterback route in the NFL
would just say,
draft.
like, just quickly to throw in on that, like, I'm not sitting here saying that you guys can't do that. All I'm saying is recognize you are betting on an outlier.
Sure.
It's not something I want to do. I don't want to bet on an outlier. I want to shoot for upside, but I want to be smart with it based off what history has told us. So I'm not completely ruling it out, but just if you're going to do it, just say, yeah, you know what? I'm betting on an outlier. I can burn this pick, and that's okay for my team. If that's the case, go for it.
And like you said, the NFL draft is going to give us all the answers here in a next couple, less than a week here. All right, tier 6.
Yes, tier 6 is a
big one.
Tier where I'm basically just saying I love all these running backs.
Right.
Draft capital will determine that. Lloyd,
Sure.
Jalen Wright, Blake Corum, and Isaac Herendo. Yes, I still love Isaac Herendo. I'm not seeing anyone give him love in the mock draft community, in the NFL draft community, and I hate it. I still love him, man. His film popped off for me. The testing was just a bonus. I still think he's just as deserving of being in this tier as any of those other guys. But I do recognize that if he gets buried in draft capital, I'll have to reassess. But all these guys I really like, I would be willing to take. Like, for example, let me just throw out a hypothetical here, right?
Okay.
I'm not saying this will happen, but Blake Corum goes to the Chargers in round 2, and Bo Nix goes to your Giants in round 2. I'm taking Blake Corum every single time. And that's because round 2 running backs actually hit at a very, very high rate for fantasy football, over 65% of the time. So, it's just, I like these guys. Let's just see what the NFL draft does.
Sure. And I'm assuming your next tier would be the wide receivers that you love here in tier 7. So compare the hit rate for the running backs and the wide receivers there, because I know we always say, get wide receiver depth. These guys have more opportunity. The lifespan for these wide receivers are a little bit longer in the NFL. And that's how I feel right now, even with the data. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Blake Corum, the hit rate's there, but I still want the wide receiver,
Yeah.
So take us through that.
So there's a lot to unpack that. I would just say running backs in round 2 have a 65% hit rate. Even round 3 is good for running backs, 54% hit rate. And again, for running backs and wide receivers, that's a top 24 points per game season within their first 4 years. For wide receivers, though, the drop-off from round 1s to round 2 is pretty steep. It's a 28% hit rate in round 2 and a 22% hit rate in round 3. So nobody had some pretty good round 2 wide receivers last year, but that was not the norm. I mean, even if you think about George Pickens, guys, George Pickens hasn't averaged anywhere near top 24 points per game season yet. He was a round 2 guy. We like him. He definitely is someone that you could sell. I don't know if you could ever get in a first for him in future classes, but guys like Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed last year, that was not normal for them to produce the way that they did as rookies. So at the end of the day, those round 2 running backs, round 3 running backs are a little bit safer, but you got to know if you can build around a guy or if you can extract the most value out of a guy.
Sure.
For example, Dameon Pierce. This was what, a year?
2 years
I guess
ago now.
This was the offseason, last offseason. I was on my campaign, sell Dameon Pierce. Now's the time to extract the value. You can get a first round pick for him. If people did that, they did the process well. If they bet on him, who's to say what would have happened, right? But at the end of the day, you got to use the asset not only after the draft, but in your mind to build the best Dynasty team in totality. Hopefully that makes sense. So anyway, round 2, round 3 wide receivers don't have a great hit rate, but that doesn't mean that you can't take a shot on them, because we have to balance like the uniqueness of this class. It's a very deep class. It's probably an outlier in many ways. and also what history has taught us. So
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people are going to find it difficult to find the balance because the wide receivers that we love here are still potentially available
yeah, it's
over
tough,
some
man.
of
It will
these
be
running
it will
backs.
be very tough to find that balance.
1,000%. I feel like this is going to be the one of the most difficult years to figure out, okay, who you should be going. And I think a lot of that is going to, as always, going to be skewed tremendously on landing spot. And people are going to
Yeah,
chase the landing spot as always over the talent, which is fine at times, but maybe sometimes it's overdone or not executed the right way when it
yeah.
comes down to these second or third round type of running backs and wide receivers here. All right, tier 7.
Yes, tier 7, a ton of wide receivers and a couple running backs. I love all these guys. I can imagine drafting them early second round, depending on draft capital.
Mm-hmm.
So Burton, Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, Jalen Polk,
That's the
Xavier
run.
Leggett,
Yeah.
Malachi Corley. Now, Braylon Allen, Aldrich Estime in the same tier in Keenan Allen. And, you might see Braylon all the way down there and you're thinking, wow, really? All the way down there? They're in the same tier. Okay, so the draft could pan out really well for Allen, and he's even higher than tier 7. But at the moment, pre-draft NFL grades, thinking about what I expect from these players, I would put him in that tier 7 with some really good names.
Yeah.
Typically, tier 7 guys you're not that all interested in.
Oh
We
my
are very
goodness.
interested in them this year. So
1,000%. And I think this feels really comfortable for me with all these tier 7 players. Jermaine Burton, Ricky. I mean, the list goes on, as you guys can see there. Is there anyone here that stands out to you? Because, well, there's one person that stands out to me, Keon Coleman. I think the fantasy community is on our side now.
yeah.
No one's really talking him up anymore. But is there anyone here specifically that you just believe in to the next level, that you believe could easily be? I mean, obviously, all these guys we believe in, at least some more than others. But is there anyone here that you potentially believe could be the next, a Puka Nakua, the next Amon-Ra St. Brown here?
I'd say those top two guys, Jermaine Burton and slick Ricky Pearsall. Ricky doesn't have like incredible production, and neither does Jermaine, but their circumstances and the context behind that makes a whole lot of sense as to why they weren't able to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Florida hasn't had a good quarterback in quite some time. And Jermaine Burton was catching passes from
Milroe?
Milroe, Jalen Milroe,
Yeah.
who rushes the ball a lot.
Every
It's
single
hard to get receiving stats there. But I just think I see a lot of Adam Thielen in Jermaine Burton. I see a lot of Jacoby Myers, Josh Downs, Jaden Reed. I have claimed that Jermaine Burton is my Jaden Reed of this class, a guy who I think could go in round 2 and could really surprise people.
Yep.
But he has this confidence, this like dog mentality that you just can't teach. And you might hate that in like a person you want to hang out with because it might be annoying to you. But I want that in my wide receiver, the guy who's like got that attitude and is willing to like put his life on the line, I guess, to make any catch. And you saw that highlight. I'm sure everyone's seen it by now. The highlight catch that he made. Or sorry, that was Ricky Pearsall.
It was Ricky Pearsall.
But Jermaine Burton has also made some very spectacular catches this year. He caught 9 out of 16 contested catches, a very good number, 56% catch rate on contested catches. He's a detailed, nuanced route runner. He plays way above his size. Like he just got that dog mentality. For Ricky Pearsall, he did make the catch of the year. He is very impressive. Again, another guy that reminds me of Adam Thielen. There's a little Tyler Boyd to his game, a little Khalil Shakir. But he's got very good hands, caught 74% of his targets and 50% of his contested catches. Expanded route tree, good technique, really good athlete, which I didn't expect. I think that's what kind of put me over the top for him. He tested really, really well, a 9.91 RAS score. I didn't think he was that type of athlete. I thought he was a good athlete. I didn't think he was like over a 9.9
type of athlete.
Type of athlete.
Right.
Elite explosion grade, elite agility grade, and elite speed grade. Ran a 4.41 at 190 pounds. So I'm all in on those two guys. I'll have a lot of them.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I would say one of these guys here in this round, in this tier 7, is going to go. I think this is maybe my bold take. I don't know who it's going to be, one of these guys is going to go in the second round. And maybe that's not bold at all,
Oh,
because I think a lot of people
most of them will.
A lot of people would say, well, a lot of people have them like third rounds, and people don't believe in Malachi. People don't believe in like, Xavier. But anyways,
I think most of these guys will. Maybe the running backs will be what might not, but
true.
I don't know.
True.
I personally
Maybe.
have all of them going round 2, except for the running backs potentially.
All right, tier 8, our last tier of the day.
So Bucky Irving is in here, Ray Davis, Tez Walker, Jatavion Sanders, Javon Baker, who I actually really love, Malik Washington, who I really love, Jacob Coing, and Will Shipley. It's funny, I probably like Javon Baker, Malik Washington more than anyone in this tier, but the scouting grades I had to stay true to. They're not ahead of these other names here, but they're probably my favorite players in that tier.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard a lot about Malik Washington. Javon Baker has been, I think some of these guys in these lower tiers are getting a lot of hype at the moment that I've been seeing a lot on the Twitter sphere and the fantasy community. Those are the two most talked about wide receivers, I feel like, currently right now, is Javon Baker and Malik Washington, that either the fantasy community is talking up, or maybe they're hearing something in the NFL circles where maybe these guys might surprise us here to potentially land in a good landing spot. But yes, all these guys, I would just agree with you. I love everyone. Bucky Irving, Jatavion Sanders. Really quick, the second round tight ends, what's the hit rate there? Because isn't that pretty high at the moment? And does that really change your Jatavion Sanders outlook if he does go in the second round? Obviously, probably depends on the landing spot, of course.
Yeah, landing spot's important. 42%, which isn't bad. I shouldn't say it's really good. It's not bad. But I haven't been a Sanders guy, and I guess I was waiting for like the community to like show me what I'm missing, but it feels like no one is a Sanders guy. Like I don't really know anyone who's like, yeah, that's my dude, you know?
Right.
That's a little concerning because I was trying to like see where I was wrong. But I think he's just an average starter.
Okay. I just wanted to know the hit rate there in that second round for the tight ends, because I know you said it wasn't too crazy.
It's not great. It's not awful.
Yeah, it's not great or awful. Yeah. So
can I ask you, how do you feel about Sanders right now?
I like Sanders. He's never been like a game breaking tight end for me. He's never going to be like I want him on my team immediately, but I think it's all dependent on landing spot. I think he has the ability to be a fantasy relevant wide receiver, and that may not be the Travis Kelce's or the Mark Andrews, but that's the Cole Kmets, that's the Jake Fergusons, that's the Dalton Schultz. That's how I'm envisioning him to potentially be in the NFL, which in this draft where there's only really just 2 tight ends, it feels like, with Brock Bowers and Tavion, and people talk about Benson Knott and Theo Johnson.
Yeah. I'm not even sure he's my 2 locked in.
Sure, and because Theo and Benson Knott definitely have been getting a lot of hype as well, and they're getting a lot of hype around the NFL circle, saying that they could be the second tight end off the board. So I get it, especially after their testing. But Jatavion Sanders, like I said, he hasn't been this incredible athlete, but somebody that I do believe can produce in the next level. In my rookie report, I put like a Walmart Darren Waller, right?
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
That's how I see it.
That definitely makes sense. And it's funny because the 40-yard dash, he didn't actually do that bad when you consider his weight. But the combine, I'm not sure really and it sounds weird because we think he's a great athlete. He was a 5-star athlete out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
But the combine doesn't really show his strengths, I don't think. I mean, I don't personally see someone who has a lot of like acceleration. I think it takes him a while to get to his top speed on film. And I just don't think that's going to benefit him at the combine. Last player I wanted to talk about was Bucky Irving. He has dropped significantly for me. And at the end of the day, testing only accounts for 10% of our grade. But if you bomb testing completely, it will impact you pretty heavily in our scouting grades. Bucky had a 2.2 RAS score, relative athletic score, and he was deserving of that terrible
That's worse than the last time I checked. I think when it first came out, it was like 3 point something.
He's well deserving of that terrible score as well, because when you go out and put up a 4.5 something, late 4.5s at 192 pounds, there are a lot of question marks already about your size, but when you're not a special athlete, there are a lot more questions that kind of rise up. The reason I was all in on Devon Achane last year was because he was special as an athlete. I felt like he was just a different outlier player. I can't sit here and claim Bucky Irving. I feel the same about him after watching his film and seeing him test. So
I hope he has
fallen for me a lot.
I hope he gets the Kyron Williams effect where he just gets drafted late and he just goes crazy in the actual system here. But really with Bucky Irving is a PPR monster, right? I mean, he goes in the right system. He gets, I don't know, 6 to 8 touches potentially in the air. And maybe that's a lot already, but like that's what you hope for in someone like a Bucky Irving here. So I completely agree with you there.
All right, well, that is it for today, guys. We appreciate you. Do us a favor, hit that like button, and we'll see you in future videos. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.